Maribel Soto has lived at Jacob Riis houses in the East Village for 27 years.
For over 7 years, I've been calling and complaining. Why is my water coming out smelling like sewage?
Jovita Santiago has lived in the NYCHA housing development for 62 years and says the water quality had been an issue long before the arsenic debacle.
The water tasted horrible and smelly. And I reported that, but they didn't pay me no mind.
Nobody comes and does what they're supposed to do. Everything's swept under the rug.
Jacob Riis tenants and city council members disgusted and disturbed that NYCHA officials took 7 days before alerting the more than 2,000 tenants that unsafe levels of arsenic had been detected in their water during testing last month. And then, in a bizarre twist, the outside lab that conducted the testing said the results were incorrect and that arsenic was not in the water, which created even more confusion.
Why does it take so long to be honest? All we're asking for is transparency.
Not so, I cannot solve the situation until you folks take a seat so we can find space and
just
figure
like
out what we can
everything,
arrange.
we just want the people to sit down and shut up
So
and not be
that's
in
not what's
where the
gonna
city
happen.
is.
If I can interrupt,
That's exactly what's happening.
Everybody is going to be heard
cover the
from.
press conference for you. I work for the city
Yes,
council.
yes.
Come next door. I will interview you on camera.
Excuse me.
Everybody's going to get to testify. Everybody's going to get
No,
to
this is
speak.
just another example of
But
like
the
trying to like
minute
not
they-
hear the citizens.
And ignore the people. You're doing it once again. You are ignoring the people. People do not want this no more.
Because the fire thing should be over at 1 o'clock.
Yes.
We should move this to a bigger place so everybody can get
Well,
you go.
right
It
now,
should have been.
correct.
Thank you.
But right now, let's see if we can expedite them ending it so that we can move this over, because this is too small for such a serious thing.
That's
let us see what we can do, but at this time I need to clear the hallway. If everybody can please go to the room
No,
next
because
door.
we're not going to leave until that happens.
Why don't you do
Until the
this?
people are actually going to be
Hold on.
heard.
So you can avoid any confrontations. Check it out and see if they can help.
Okay.
And then they'll be
Just-
going.
Well, we
they'll be
can
here.
just stand here. We'll be
Just let
cool.
them be here. They'll
Give
be
me a
cool.
second so we can
Okay.
try and...
But don't
All right.
close the door. We just
Okay,
close
okay.
the door.
Give me a second.
We will not
Give me a
go
second.
in.
All right.
That's being
John?
rude.
Excuse me, folks. Folks, if you can please stand to the side so we can...
Shut down the people. Go ahead and then identify yourself. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Yesenia Vargas, and I'm a tenant of Riis for 15 years. I'm sorry for the inconvenience and having to move the meeting over here because of the space. But honestly, we do not feel comfortable at this point in time to testify here, and we would like the meeting to be done in our neighborhood. And that is what we are recommending at this point. We collectively have decided that that is what we want because this has been a huge inconvenience to us as residents of Riis. And we are just pretty much done at this point. We are angry and we just want to be considered. It's just been too much. And right now my anxiety is just really, I don't even know what to say. Like, this is my day off. And I'm here because I care. I work for goals, but I'm also a tenant, like I said, and I've been suffering and I've been sick and, enough is enough. To have to come here today and see what I saw and have to wait outside and have to wait outside again, it's just too much. It's really too much. And I'm tired. And we demand answers and we demand to be treated fairly and we have rights. We deserve answers. So we're all angry and upset and we need to be treated just fairly and everyone wants to just go home and be at peace. Like this week, like I was saying earlier, like I went home to no light, to no electricity. It's unfair. It's the arsenic, no electricity, repairs, it's just so many things. So that is what I'm testifying today. I'm saying that we don't feel comfortable and we want to have this meeting in our neighborhood where we feel that we are going to be heard. And that's what I have to say. Thank you for your time and sorry for the inconvenience.
Thank you very much. And you spoke beautifully earlier and today.
Thank you.
I want to say congratulations.
Thank
Really
you.
very exceptional.
Thank you.
Is the assembly member there?
I'd like to address Ms. Vargas. Ms. Vargas, thank you so much for your testimony. I hear what you're saying and I agree with you. I think we need to bring government to the people and do these things in the community. So I understand your requests and I hear your frustration and aggravation. And so I just want to say that for the record. I think I don't know actually legally, because we are bound by specific constraints around open government laws on how we deal with that. But I just want to say that I agree with you. I think we need to do more in the community. I think having hearings during the day is good for the folks that work in government and not good for the people we serve, who should be able, to whom these meetings should be accessible and should be later. So I just want to say that for the record. I thank you.
My name is Jamani Williams, public advocate of the city of New York. I want to thank Chair Aviles and Chair Brewer, the members of both committees for holding a hearing and allowing me to provide a statement. About 3 weeks ago, my office and I released a report called How the Other Half Lives in Public Housing, named after a book of Jacob Riis called How the Other Half Lives that was written over 100 years ago, which spotlights the inexcusable and dangerous conditions of NYCHA developments that we witnessed during our 5-borough tour earlier this year. We did it inside of Jacob Riis houses. Not even 12 hours later, we learned that NYCHA discovered arsenic in the tap water at Jacob Riis houses. Even though they knew we were going to be there, we were one of the folks that were never told of what was going on. According to the city article, the test results that show arsenic in the tap water was completely a week before any of the residents were notified. After being notified, many of the residents informed reporters that they do not drink from the tap water because it was either brown or smells. To this day, residents still complain about the water, and let it be known that many of these complaints were happening well before August. However, they have not been given a reasonable explanation of to why that is. This could be a result of aging pipes, and we all need to know what the state of NYCHA's pipe system is through the 5 boroughs. It is important to note that DEP conducted tests of its water to its delivery points at Jacob Riis, and it came back negative for any contaminants. This is clearly another example of how NYCHA continues to fail their residents by creating an unsafe environment. In our report, we highlight the years of water damage that has ruined many apartments and the constant heat and hot water outages during the winter months. New issues like the safety of the water supply keep cropping up while recurring issues remain unabated, and it appears that NYCHA is not doing much to resolve these problems. I don't know what is more disconcerting, whether NYCHA's CEO has recently stepped down during the midst of this turmoil, or that he is still serving in the capacity of chair, making a pretty good salary, and is not here. A chair who resides 5 states away with a distance of over 1,000 miles, I do think is disrespectful that he's not here. Disrespectful to the council, disrespectful to all of NYCHA and Jacob Riis in specific. And it's inexplicable that he's not here to answer questions. NYCHA's chronic mismanagement led to the appointment and oversight of a federal monitor. Our report was clear that more funding was actually needed for NYCHA, but we were also clear that the mismanagement was not necessarily attached to funding, and that mismanagement was solely in the auspices of NYCHA. The federal monitor was not notified by NYCHA management of the initial and arsenic test samples. NYCHA has to have a process in place to expeditiously notify residents, the mayor and the federal monitor and other electeds of emergency conditions, irrespective of water tests that yield a positive or a false positive result. In closing, I'd like to know why a contractor who was not certified with the city to do this type of testing was hired to do the testing. That's what we have heard, and I think that's a question that needs to be answered. In addition to that, Why did it take so long to complete the water testing? And why was the first test not rushed like the later ones? Why would you wait so long to get the test completed? There was a 7-day period between when the testing company had allowed the city to release the results compared to when residents at Jacob Riis found out. It is extremely inconsiderate that NYCHA residents were the last ones to hear about this, even though they are the ones directly impacted. I do have to say, NYCHA was encouraged to have meetings all throughout that process, and they refused. We need to know what is the process for informing individuals in emergency situations and whether NYCHA follow these procedures. If there's no process in place, then one has to be created and implemented immediately. Lastly, knowledge and information is power. NYCHA cannot render its residents powerless to determine what are the necessary steps to take for their health and the health of their family. Residents can make informed decisions, but they first need to be informed. I do have to say as well that I know this is a systemic issue. Having been through 3 different people in charge, it is clear just removing one person is not going to fix the system. It is in deeply entrenched systemic problems that are happening in NYCHA. Thank you so much.
Thank you. First, we're going to hear from tenant leaders. So if you could come up, the president of Riis, Daphne Williams, Madam. Go ahead, Ms. Williams. Madam President, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Daphne Williams, president of Jacob Riis Houses.
You
Now,
may testify. Go ahead.
yes, about our water situation at NYCHA. To say that fear was that we were in fear, we were more than in fear. Because to know that
this is just assembly member asking staff. We're just logging in and to see what's going on after hearing.
Okay, wait a little while because the president is speaking.
okay, to say that fear is a factor is more than fear. To be called out of your homes at 8 o'clock at night to tell you that there's a possibility that the water has arsenic in it, it scares you. Okay, and then they tell you that you can't drink the water, you can't cook with the water, and some people didn't even want to bathe with the water because they were scared. And I believe that to do something, for us to go through something like that is unacceptable. And I'm very angry with how NYCHA came and showed that they didn't, it seemed like they didn't really care about the residents of Jacob Riis Houses, because 1 minute they tell us it's not arsenic, and then they have other vendors that, as you said, that gave the results back to us and said it was arsenic. So that gave confusion, and confusion is something that someone don't want to go through because you don't know whether to go to the right or to the left, and who's lying and who's not. And who that said that there is no arsenic in the water. How are we to know? Because lead could be in the water, and we're drinking that water. And then our elderly, sick and shut in, they didn't even have the ability to someone to come out and tell them or speak with them. So we had to go and talk with them and let them know, okay, we're trying to rectify this thing, and we're trying to let you know that we're going to be all right. But who would say that we're going to be all right when NYCHA is not telling us that we are? Because they're not, and we're not all right. We're not comfortable with the founders of this, and we won't be comfortable for a long time because this is unacceptable. And not only the water, but even last Wednesday, the structure of our building, the pillars, was corroded, and they was going to say that they may need to evacuate the building, but which they didn't have to. But the tenants shouldn't even have to go through that. So Jacob Riis is going through a lot these times. Even the outage of the gas outage. People have been out of gas outages for 6 months. They can't cook. They have to use hot plates. You go home, you go to work, and when you come home from work, you got to think, because you want to function through your days at work, but you can't because you got to go home wondering how you're going to manage, how you're going to cook, what are you going to do? And when you do 2 hot plates, one goes out, then your outage goes out, then the lights goes out. So that's a lot to go through. So Jacob Riis is going through a lot. Not only the gas outage, but also the soil. There's a lot of construction going on in Jacob Riis, and the turning of the soils, we don't know what the air quality is of that because we're breathing it. We have so much dirt piles over there that's going in our windows. We can't sit on the benches because it's going to our nose, and the children can't play. You know, you got to be careful that the kids don't touch the dirt because kids play and they touch. Okay, the leads in at home, they can't touch because there's so much out in the homes, in the Jacob Riis houses, in the apartments, that is unlivable and is unsafe. And the quality of life is going down. And I fought NYCHA for that, and I called them accountability for that in all that we're going through. Because as I say, not only Jacob Riis, but housing development all around the boroughs are going through a lot. And I thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. And I want to thank the chairs again for their leadership on this issue and for calling this hearing on something that is specific to a location, but it is clearly part of larger systemic issues. During a September 6th briefing hosted by City Hall, we were told that the laboratory that did the testing was not licensed to do testing for metals. And in your testimony, you said that the lab was not ELAP certified. How long has this contracted company been doing testing for NYCHA? How was this vendor selected? And why would NYCHA select a vendor that was not certified in all regards by New York State?
Thank you, council member, for those questions. I'm happy to answer them for you today. In 2019, NYCHA sought bids to manage our Legionella work. This vendor was the lowest responsive and responsible bidder at the time. This vendor has been on contract with us since about 2019. On the night of Friday, August 12th, when we had excessive cloudy water complaints and decided to take the additional step to do additional testing, we sought one of our vendors who was available on the weekend to do this work. Our first vendor that we called was not available. And so then we called Liquitech, and they said they would make themselves available on an emergency basis to come Saturday morning to the site to take the tests for us.
So you had retained this vendor previously?
Yes.
Have you had any issues with them before? In this case, they provided a false positive. Is it possible in the past they could have provided a false negative?
This vendor has been on contract with us since 2019, but I want to reiterate that NYCHA did not select the lab EMT. That was selected by the vendor and was not in compliance with our contract that requires them to follow state, local, and federal rules for selecting their lab.
But you all selected the vendor that selected the lab.
Select the vendor, and
So you realize when you trace it back, it comes back to you.
Understood.
We will sample the water tanks at every visit, so they'll be sampled twice per month.
Councilmember Barron, then Councilmember Martin.
All I can say is this is a damn shame that we sitting here talking about water and the lives of people at risk. And also to Mayor Adams, he should fire Greg Russ. He should not be the chair of NYCHA. Gross mismanagement, incompetency, and the insensitivity of not coming to this hearing and at least explaining himself. And you shouldn't have accepted that from him, and we should have subpoenaed him and made him come to this hearing. But I think he should be fired, and I think that the testing should happen in all NYCHA developments. NYCHA has 335 developments, 177,000 plus units, 525,000 residents. And we had a press conference in my district with pink houses, with boulevard houses, with linden houses, with cypress houses, with Brookline, Penn Workman, and all of them said their water was discolored. And you're not supposed to smell water. It's supposed to be odorless. So this is a citywide situation, and nobody believes you. I haven't found anybody that I spoke to believes you that they made a mistake. And when you tested it, oh, it wasn't that, it was something else. It was the vendor. Nobody believes that. You lost credibility throughout this city. So I just feel that NYCHA residents are disrespected because they're predominantly Black and brown, low-income people. And folk just don't care enough about NYCHA. And just to listen to this hearing, to listen to what you're saying and how you're justifying all of this, is a damn shame. And I think that this body should monitor you closer. We should subpoena people when they need to come forward. NYCHA should test every development, because the same thing happened when y'all lied about lead paint. And in the past, it was a lie that lead paint was tested properly in our developments, and I was on that case as well. So I don't have a whole lot to say. My colleagues did a great job. I think the residents should be the managers of the places where they live. We need to get into residential management, and NYCHA, stop privatizing and start sanitizing the water.
Councilmember Marte and then the public advocate.
Thank you for being here. I want to thank the chairs for the phenomenal questions and dealing with all the constraints that we had today with moving the meeting here. And I'll also like to thank Councilmember Herrera for her questions. This is really frustrating. We have a chair of an agency that's not willing to be here. And so my first question off the bat is, where is he? And is he in New York City? Or did he take the early flight back to Minnesota? One other question I have is that there's a lot of mistrust, as Councilmember Barron said. What are you doing to regain the trust from other NYCHA developments on the Lower East Side? I have developments from Smith Houses to LaGuardia to Rutgers asking, is my water contaminated? Is NYCHA inspecting it? Can I see the records? Can I see the data? What are you guys doing to respond to those questions? And how are you informing council members that represent those people and have to answer to those people to work with us so we could get the right answers to their hands? So please answer those questions.
Thank you very much for that question. I think you had a couple of questions, so I'll start and then I'll pass it over to my colleagues. So your first question, Mr. Russ is not in New York, but I cannot tell you where he is. All I can say is that he's not here today. With respect to the testing that has been done, I will defer to my colleague, Dan Green, who can get into that. And I would also, with respect to the water just generally, I would love to have the commissioner, COO Vincent Sapienza talk about the water safety just generally in New York City. All of the testing that we did do is on our website. As my colleague Dan Green said, any additional testing that we will do at Riis Houses will also be on our website. But DEP, I defer to them with respect to just generally the drinking water in the city of New York.
I'll just add one more question underneath that. As we all know, Jacob Riis Houses was one of the developments that were affected by Sandy. There's a lot of renovation work doing there for resiliency. There's other NYCHA developments that have those same type of repairs and massive infrastructure changes. Do you think that had something to do with the contaminated water? And are you specifically working much closer on these sites that have these massive FEMA funded resiliency projects?
Well, there was no contamination for arsenic in the water. In the scientific results, if you review them, show that. In the retraction from the laboratory, which was unprecedented and probably they had to put it on their letterhead, it's hugely embarrassing for that laboratory, retracted all prior results. But we will continue to test, to your question of rebuilding back trust. I will be there tomorrow. We will be testing tomorrow. We will be testing, as I said, twice a month and sharing that information with residents and explaining it. In terms of Sandy sites, so the answer to your question, there was no contamination, so there was no impact for the construction. Prior to my current role, I was a compliance director. We have worked with residents at Smith Houses, at Red Hook Houses to help oversee some of the Sandy work and then some of the environmental components of it. to ensure that there is air monitoring and soil management protocols that ensure that the work is done appropriately. When you're doing construction in New York City, you have to be careful of sensitive receptors such as residential buildings. And this work is, as you know, right up against the residential buildings. So we want to make sure it's done safely. But we know that we have a lot of trust building to build back here, a lot of credibility to build back here. And that's what we hope to really do over the next 4 months. But we got a hard road ahead of us.
And to the extent that you have specific questions about your developments or the developments that are within your district, I'm happy to coordinate with your staff to come to your developments, hear what the issues are, and work together.
Thank you. And I second the call that Councilmember Barron had. We should fire Greg Russ. He got to go. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rebecca Perkins. I live at Jacob Riis. I've been living here for 8 years. I have 3 small children ranging in age 15, 13, and 8. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. I don't trust NYCHA whatsoever. It's hard for me to believe them when they said that there's no arsenic in the water, and then they telling me, you know, don't trust it, then trust it, then don't trust it, then trust it. I don't know what to believe, because as of yesterday, I got a call back from the kid's doctor and said that my 2 oldest children tested positive for arsenic. So they not telling me, they said that it's like an organic arsenic. I'm not too sure, but I'm still scared because I don't know what to expect later on down the line. I don't. I have a bad relationship with NYCHA. Besides the water incident, my housing repair, horrible. I have to reach out to city council members just to get repairs done, like an essential of having a bathroom sink. I went 6 months without having a proper working bathroom. My kids are still scared. I'm scared. And once again, we have no clear answers. And we just supposed to believe NYCHA because they say that it's clear and it's okay and it's safe. But you're saying this, but at the same time, you're also saying that you're going to come back to test the water. What are you testing if there's nothing in the water? How can we believe y'all? This is not right. I live in housing. I don't know if y'all live in housing. And I don't have the luxury of actually leaving housing and not have to deal with this. So until you sit in my shoes and in the residents' shoes and to see what we go through, it's scary. And then y'all giving us cases of water, and then like $200, what is that gonna do? I still buy bottles of water. I don't trust it. I don't think I will ever trust it. So I'm sick and I'm disgusted because I feel like we deserve better than what y'all giving us. Period. A peace of mind is really hard to come by. And I don't have one.
We have a question for you. If it's okay, we have a question for you.
Okay.
Ms. Perkins, can you tell us, when you discovered this information, how did you discover what was happening? And then when you were receiving water, what did you receive and what allotments?
Well, I found out the night of not by NYCHA. I happened to go downstairs around 8:30 at night to go to the store, and I seen a big commotion. And I walked over and I said, what's going on? They said, well, there's arsenic in the water. I said, arsenic, what is that? Don't drink it, don't cook with it, but you could shower with it and clean with it. I'm like, okay, well, what is arsenic? Google it. That's what the gentleman told me.
Was the gentleman a NYCHA staff person? Was it an elected official? Could you discern who they were?
He had on a NYCHA chain. And he just, I forgot his name, but he basically told me to Google it. And then he said, get some water. He said, get a case of water. I said, well, what is 12 bottles of water gonna do? I need, I have a large family upstairs. I need more water. And he's like, well, there's not enough to give everybody. I said, well, you got people over here with 4 cases of water. Can I get another one? He's like, no, you can't. Just come down tomorrow and get it. And then he just dismissed me. And then I told everybody on my building. I started once I found out that the water was unsafe to drink and cook with, I ran upstairs to my building and started knocking on everybody's door on my floor. I live on the 13th floor. And I was like, I don't know if y'all know or not, but the water's contaminated. You can't drink it. It's arsenic in it. And they're like, what's arsenic? I'm like, I don't know, Google it. I just heard it was dangerous. That's what he told me.
Do you recall when you first saw signage in the buildings that said what was happening?
11 p.m. that night.
And in terms of receiving water after that initial moment, what was the distribution like? What were you allocated as a resident?
They said 2 cases per household.
So
first it was 1 case, and then I think 2 days later they upgrade to 2 cases.
And so 2 cases per day per
Yes.
household.
Per household.
Were you bathing with the water?
I was at first. At first, I'm not gonna lie, I was scared to take a bath in the water. I was like, I can't touch it.
Sure.
So I did like a bird bath, you know. But then I'm grown, I can't do that. But my kids, they're younger, so I'm like, if you guys can bathe with the water, I'm still gonna shake a chance.
I understand.
Yeah, it's scary, you know, and your kids feel like they're gonna die because when you read arsenic, it's very scary and traumatizing.
I hear you. Did you request the testing to be done from NYCHA? Did anyone tell you about arsenic testing?
Nobody told me about it, but I would say we found out Friday, Saturday, they came to my apartment and they tested the water 1 time. And then they didn't go to everybody's apartment and do testing.
Right.
They just went to my apartment and they said they did it daily. No, they only did it 1 time. So,
oops.
Councilmember Rivera had a question.
Yeah.
I just want to say that you are right in saying how much water you need for your family. Just for context, I think it's estimated that the average person goes through 100 gallons per day. And besides the 2 DEP water stations that were set up, which we had to advocate for to remain in place, giving out, as per the testimony, 46,000 gallons of water in a week, even if you divide that by every household, is only 27 gallons. So just to do some math, we don't think there was enough outreach, engagement, or even supplies provided to the families. But I understand that this was an unprecedented situation. So Ms. Perkins, I just wanted to ask you, were you ever visited in your home to have your water tested? Were you ever reached out to any, like specifically, did you get that robocall?
No.
Anything?
No, I would say that Saturday, housing workers did come and said, run the water for 3 hours, don't cut it off. And I did that. And they didn't come and do like a sample. They didn't do any of that.
That was when you saw somebody come up to you and give you any sort of guidance.
Yeah, and then when I went to the management office, nobody knows anything neither. And you have to realize this happened on Friday. So from Friday night to Saturday, Sunday, we are all going crazy. Who can we talk to? Then they said they gave up meetings. Nobody came and talked to us and give us a meeting. Nobody sat down with us and tell us like what's gonna happen. We as tenants is finding out on our own. We trying to come together to figure this out because we don't know. And then it's sad because there's some tenants that didn't find out until 4 days later. So they still using the water. This was very unorganized. And it was like, it was disgusting. It was. It really was. And it still is because we're still unsure. We still don't trust it.
And you have every right to feel that way. So I just wanted to thank you for being here and ask, as someone who, I would say you are someone who truly cares about this community, who is an engaged person, who has a good relationship with your neighbors. I'm sorry that you had to go through this. So I just want to thank you for waiting this long and adding your voice to this experience. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Here today, the council and everyone aboard. My name is Mr. Albert Negron. I'm the resident association president of the BROADWAY houses. This is very concerning to all the Lower East Side residents. I have a tenant in my BROADWAY houses who tested for arsenic over 57% in her urine. She's gonna give me some more information that I can reach out to, but I think that in the housing authority, the contractors, that they allow a contractor to get millions of dollars for whatever job they're gonna do, they should not be able to subcontract to anyone else. The contractor has the fulfillment for the whole contract. They sublease these contractors to other contractors, and they're not doing a good job. You see what happened with the situation we have right here today. Also, I think that the water testing would be not twice a week, it should be once a week for the Riis houses. Also for the fact that there's no trust in that situation, what they're going through. And also the fact that, hey, bring the laboratory to the projects because y'all taking the water to the lab and the labs are not working. You know, they need to be accountable, like the gentleman said. These are dealing with people's lives, not 5 lives, thousands of people's lives that live in the project. You know, I have family members in the Riis houses, been like neighbor friends from Belatic to Riis to Wall to Baruch to every project in the Lower East Side. I think it's a very serious situation, and I hope this thing can get resolved really soon. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much.
Hello, yes. Thank you so much for having me here. Thank you for holding this meeting. My name is Robert Sanderman. I'm a staff attorney at Queens Legal Services. I've been practicing there for 8 years. I'm a tenants rights attorney, and I also do community economic development. So we're the largest legal service provider around the country. We represent tenants and residents in myriad of issues, foreclosure, education. Particularly, I do eviction defense work, and I represent NYCHA tenants in administrative proceedings, housing proceedings, federal court, and state Supreme Court. Unfortunately, my experience as an attorney working with NYCHA is not different from what we're dealing with today. Particularly, I'm working with a group in a building in Queens where they were without hot water since October 2021. They pled with NYCHA, they sent complaints, all that went ignored. And it wasn't until we filed litigation in court that the ball started to get moving. But to my surprise, it was at a glacial place. Those tenants have to suffer the indignity and the humanity of not having hot water, not having answers, and it's just being replicated over and over and over. And it's the benefit of having hearings and having the information shed like this in the public that really helps get things done. But those tenants and most tenants citywide suffer that neglect and disrespect where I personally witnessed misrepresentations of this is going to get fixed next week. And then the tenants comparing it over and over and over until they got disillusioned, where it was really hard for me to keep people engaged in the case. And again, that's not unique. There's a separate building where, as you already know from a lot of constituents, a lot of people do not get the repairs that they need done at all, properly, or on time. There's been plenty of situations where NYCHA tried to address it and actually made it worse. And then again, delays in getting those repairs. And then that's just relates back to what's happening now, where people just have the additional stress, the confusion that was described all day. What was really disheartening to me was having a tenant from Jacob Riis call me, and her only plea was that she just wanted answers. She wasn't saying like file litigation, I need money. She said, I just want answers. And this was weeks after alleged testing happened. And then it was just very disheartening. So she asked me to come here on behalf of her and other residents today to speak to what was discussed earlier, that is well documented that a lot of NYCHA residents who are predominantly people of color suffer from environmental racism, lack of access to quality healthcare. These folks will come out of pocket to stay elsewhere. The fear that they have about the water has not been addressed. They need clear, specific answers because of the long-standing distrust that they have with NYCHA and also elected officials. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I would say that your clients are fortunate.
We will now hear from Aisa Torres, followed by Stanford Rubenstein and Kevin McCall.
Your name is
I'm almost.
Starting time.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. As the chairperson of Manhattan South District Council of Presidents, I want to first thank the resident leadership of Riis for standing up and defending their residents, which we all took an oath when we become officers. As elected officers, we might not get paid, but we are elected officers of our developments. And in that respect, I speak on behalf of the 45 districts that we need to talk about the fact that part of the issue is the contractors that come into our developments don't follow the contracts. There is no follow-up. And ultimately, these are the kind of issues that happen. Arsenic is very high level on all our water sites that we have because of Sandy, because of 9/11, for whatever reasons. But these contractors do not follow the guidelines that need to be followed, covering the dirt. What happened in Riis, in my opinion, and no, I'm not an expert, but I know enough after dealing with this for 8 years in Alfred E. Smith, that none of the dirt was covered in the buildings with a water tank. So it is and can happen. And so I ask that the council begin to look at how these contracts are being done, how we, the resident and the resident can grade the contractors for what they do. There are several developments, and when I say several across the board, so this definitely would probably affect every councilman that has public housing, that are complaining about the value of water and what the water is and what is going on. And so I have a clear picture of that we need to have every development tested, especially those that are dealing with Sandy construction, because the contractors are not doing what they're supposed to protect the environment. And because of that, these are the results. Nobody cares that we're human. Nobody cares that we have children. Nobody cares that we have elderly people who have underlying conditions. And even if the water is negative, the stress of having to deal with what the residents and Riis had to deal with is unconscionable. And everybody should be accountable for this. You made a mistake. Everybody makes a mistake.
Time expired.
Everyone in Riis and in public housing has been affected by this. I thank you. I thank the two chairs, and I thank all the council people who were present from the Lower East Side to say we're present and we stand beside the residents in public housing. Good evening.
Mr. Rubenstein.
Thank you. I represent 172 residents of Riis housing. And what they want me to tell you is, simply put, fear remains rampant among the residents. Fear of having gotten sick, if in fact the water was tainted. Fear of really getting sick. And testing is needed on site for people who are afraid of getting sick or having gotten sick to get tested if they want on site, blood testing, urine testing, to make sure that they didn't get sick. Now today, for the first time, I heard about a $200 payment being made to each of the residents, if I heard correctly. I'd like to get assurances from the New York City Housing Authority that that's going to prevent them from any legal remedies they have with regard to any action for damages for getting sick or fear of getting sick. If this is $200 being paid to them outright without requiring them to give up their rights, and I'd appreciate if any member of the council might address that issue with them when they come back. And I thank you for the opportunity on behalf of 171 tenants to speak with you.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, sir.
Good afternoon, Reverend Kevin McCall, founder of the Crisis Action Center. First, I want to thank the city council and all the council members for doing an extremely wonderful job for holding NYCHA accountable for their actions. As I sit here and listen, I heard about this issue on the news, and I heard about it because of different residents was calling. But when I heard when I heard about it, it was very disheartening because I thought I was in Mississippi. I thought I was in Flint. And I happened to look, they said it was right here in New York City. And it's appalling that NYCHA would sit here and the CEO doesn't come. doesn't say that there's trust issues, but you don't even, when you have trust issues with someone, you gain it back by doing something. When I have trust issues with someone, I gain it back by doing something. You still have relationships with the same company that did damage. That says a lot. No, someone needs to be held accountable, not only just losing their job, because anybody can lose a job and get another one, but it needs to be a criminal probe needs to happen because someone needs to be arrested for what has transpired. Somebody lied here. And only way that happens is when somebody is held accountable. NYCHA had failed the tenants. How in the world that you can look for arsenic in the water, but you can go to a tenant's apartment and you can see other repairs that needs to happen and you look beyond that? Do you really care about the Black and the brown people that live in NYCHA? Do you really care that someone has to go up a flight of stairs because the elevator is constantly broke? Do you really care that when you go up in someone's apartment, that the apartment that you go inside to test them for the water, that you yourself have to take the stairs because the elevator is broke? Do you really care, NYCHA? I don't think so. Until NYCHA is held responsible and someone goes to jail, that's sending a message. That's what relates to trust, and that's what will negate to someone being held responsible for their actions. It's been so many changes in NYCHA. Everybody passing the buck to this one, that one. They don't know what's happening. Until someone goes to jail, that's when it's held responsible. Thank you very much.
Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Hello? Good evening.
Time starts now.
Hello?
We can hear you. Time starts now. You can go ahead.
Yes. What is it more to say? We have the same old problem going on and on and on. Brown water. When we talk about the water, it gets clean for a couple of days. The roof's about to cave in. Reese, I was there. My heart goes out to them. I was there during the press conference. So what are we going to do about it? We just talking and talking. What are you going to do about it?
Ramona, thank you. Thank you very much. And I believe one more person. Go ahead.
NYCHA'S.
Time starts now.
Can you all hear me? Hello?
Yes,
Can you
yes,
hear
we
me?
can.
Okay. I think it goes without saying that a terrible wrong has been committed. First, by the failure to notify timely the lab results, which were released, indicating high levels of arsenic, and the blunder which had been discovered when a retraction had been given. Regardless to the reasons, a failure occurred where tenants weren't properly notified what had been found. And to allege an abundance of caution was the basis or the reason behind the delay is a total contradiction of what it means to take caution. Because an abundance of caution would have compelled swift notification, not delays to seek further testing. It is this kind of judgment that is being made every day concerning the lives of tenants who are totally and utterly dependent upon NYCHA to do the right thing concerning them. So how many opportunities will be permitted before corrective action is taken? How many people will sit here and hear the history of NYCHA repeated over and over by its tenants who are continually at their mercy for the basics, such as heat and hot water? And when the very basic element is alleged to be poison, yet information is withheld for any reason, why should it be taken for granted that the intended demise of these tenants is what's being planned while promises are made to preserve and keep their housing? Because if water, a very basic element, which is everywhere, can be allowed to be consumed while Legionella exists, no retraction given on those test results, then they are perfectly capable of allowing something far more deadly. And the justification given by the mayor is that no positive test results in the last 12 months were given, without stating that you in fact tested in the last 12 months, yet ignoring the current tests which say positive because, quote, people can't catch Legionnaire's disease by drinking water. It's true, they can't. But the most common route for transmission is by inhalation of aerosolized air. You can catch it in the air. It is breathed into the lungs through vents when bacteria is aerosolized. The lack of information that is factual on these positive test results for Legionella is either deception on the part of the mayor or ignorance regarding scientific data being reported. I'd like to think the mayor, who shows up to drink the water, would also drink from the cup of his own misinformation, because if the science hasn't informed him, maybe a personal experience will. To see NYCHA once again void its obligations to its tenants while the mayor pleads ignorance yet swift action once notified, and have the federal monitor demand all communications and data as if poised to spank them and bring them into compliance, while they allow these developments to deteriorate all around us, is a hocus pocus show.
Thank you. If you could wrap up.
Tenants are made to believe protection exists where none in fact is.
Thank
I
you.
don't know if you can wrap your head around what this means as a tenant living in NYCHA, but try arsenic in the water, no retraction statement given until inquired concerning those results by independent media.
Thank you very much.
What until then that the tenants were notified?
All right, we have to wrap up.
Thank you. But I want to say, what is the message to NYCHA tenants, if not sit and die?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, that concludes our public testimony.